Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Imagine buying a brand new sports car, right? You pay top dollar, you get the premium fuel, and then you find out the mechanic secretly swapped your engine for a lawnmower's just to keep you from speeding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that is exactly what one of the world's most prominent technology companies got caught doing this week. Welcome to Connecting the Dots, broadcasting live from Snarful Solutions Group right here in Sacramento, California. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan.
Today is Thursday, June 11th, 2026. And, whether you're prepping for a massive board meeting or you're just trying to figure out how these rapidly shifting tech headlines actually impact your day-to-day life, you are in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to cut right through the noise and figure out what all this actually means for you.
Exactly.
And we are doing it without the insider jargon, right? Our goal is to make sure you walk away understanding the underlying mechanics of these stories.
Yeah.
Not just, the surface level talking points.
Right, because the details actually matter. And speaking of things you need to be prepared for, let's take a quick look at the conditions outside. Here in Sacramento, it is sunny and a genuinely scorching 103 degrees Fahrenheit today.
It is so intense out there.
It really is. And there's this very light, 6-mile-per-hour wind that is doing absolutely nothing to cool things down.
No, it's just pushing the hot air around. And, that heat is actually part of a much broader, highly active weather pattern across the country today. Looking at the national dashboard this morning, there are currently 266 active U.S. weather alerts.
Wait, 266? That's massive.
Yeah, it's a lot. And 177 of those are happening right over land. So if you have travel plans or family in other states, please make sure you check weather.gov for the exact details in your local area.
Yeah, definitely do that. And, that hesitation we're seeing in the skies is actually mirroring some of the extreme caution we saw on the ground in the financial markets yesterday. Wednesday, June 10th, brought a pretty noticeable dip for traditional stocks.
Right. Everybody was holding their breath.
Exactly. The Dow Jones closed at 49,918.78, which was down 1.66% for the day.
And the S&P 500 mirrored that exact downward trend, closing at 7,266.99, so that's down 1.14%. Traditional investors were definitely pulling back and evaluating their positions midweek.
But if you pivot over to the crypto boards this morning, it is an entirely different landscape. Today, June 11th, is showing a really solid crypto rally.
Oh, completely different story there.
Right. Bitcoin opened at 61,456.17 and closed out its cycle at 62,752.89. That is up over 2% for the day.
Wow.
So depending on what sector your investments live in, you're either playing defense right now or you're enjoying a pretty decent surge.
It really is a bifurcated market today. You're either way down or way up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, before we jump into today's primary tech analysis, I need to share this. Today's episode is brought to you by Strong Coffee, the premium instant coffee that tastes like a traditional brew, but is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and adaptogens like ashwagandha. Get clean, sustained energy without the jitters. Use promo code SNARFUL for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com.
All right, let's get into the core of today's news.
Let's unpack this. We have 3 distinct stories crossing the wire today, but they are they're entirely interconnected. They all center around the incredibly messy, highly controversial rollout of Anthropic's newest AI model, Claude Fable 5.
Yeah, messy is definitely the right word for it.
It is. What we're looking at is this fascinating cascade of cause and effect as a tech giant tries to make artificial intelligence, quote unquote, safe. And in the process, they just alienate researchers, everyday professionals, and even their biggest corporate partners.
And, the context here is key because Anthropic has spent years marketing itself as the ethical, safety-conscious alternative in the AI space.
Yeah.
They built their entire brand on being the responsible adults in the room.
Right.
But with the release of Fable 5, we're getting a stark look at the friction between theoretical safety and real-world utility.
Exactly. So let's start with story number 1, which is this secret sabotage backlash. So here are the facts. Anthropic implemented an initial covert policy to deliberately degrade Fable 5's performance when researchers used it for what the industry calls frontier AI development.
Right, which basically means pushing the boundaries of what the software can do.
Yeah. So if a user was trying to train a competing AI model or maybe debug some complex AI architecture, Fable 5 would secretly fall back to a much older, lesser model called Opus 4.8. And they didn't tell the user this was happening.
Which is just wild. To understand the gravity of this, you have to realize what frontier AI development actually entails for these people. These are researchers paying top dollar for compute power to build the next generation of software.
Right.
Anthropic basically looked at their prompts, realized these users were building potential competitors, and quietly nerfed the output to protect their own market dominance.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this because I am genuinely confused here. Anthropic is run by some of the smartest software engineers on the planet, right?
Supposedly, yes.
So why would they think they could secretly downgrade a model without developers noticing? I mean, these are people who monitor token outputs and API responses obsessively. Did they really think they wouldn't get caught?
It's baffling, isn't it? It points to a really severe miscalculation in their boardroom. Developers measure AI performance through tokens, which are essentially pieces of words.
Right.
When you send a complex prompt to Fable 5, you expect a certain inference speed and a really high level of logical reasoning in those output tokens. But Opus 4.8 processes tokens differently, and it hallucinates way more frequently on complex code.
Oh, so it's obvious immediately.
Exactly. Within days, researchers were looking at their dashboards, seeing this degraded logic, and realizing the math just wasn't adding up. The system was behaving like legacy tech.
Which goes back to that car analogy from earlier. It's like you're buying premium gas for your sports car, but the gas station secretly pumps unleaded because they don't want you winning a street race.
Yeah.
And you still pay the premium price.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the reaction from the community was swift and, frankly, brutal. Dean Ball, a prominent tech researcher, publicly called the move shockingly hostile.
Wow.
Yeah. And Will Brown, the research lead at Prime Intellect, pointed out that it felt like Anthropic was just pulling the ladder up behind them. They were essentially declaring that only they could be trusted to do advanced AI research while simultaneously taking money from other researchers and sabotaging their work.
That completely shatters the collaborative nature of the open tech community. I mean, it forces a massive question of trust. If a company is willing to silently manipulate your data processing just because they don't like what you're building, what does that mean for the rest of us?
And that is the core issue for working professionals. If you're a financial analyst or, say, a structural engineer relying on these models to verify your math, silent degradation is an unacceptable risk.
Oh, absolutely. You could build a bridge based on bad math.
Exactly. You need to know with absolute certainty that your software is operating at full capacity. If the tool can secretly decide to give you worse answers based on some hidden internal policy, it ceases to be a reliable professional tool.
Well, due to the fierce backlash, Anthropic did issue a public apology. They admitted they made the wrong trade-off, and now they're backtracking slightly.
Very slightly.
Right. They're not removing the restrictions. They still won't let you use Fable 5 for frontier AI development, but they are making the restrictions visible. They'll now alert users that a request is being rerouted to Opus 4.8 instead of just quietly degrading the results behind the scenes.
But the damage to their reputation is already done. They showed their hand.
Yeah, they really did. And that issue of predictability and trust in our software is exactly what drives the next piece of this puzzle. Moving on to our next story, we have to ask, why is Anthropic so fiercely protective and paranoid about Fable 5 in the first place?
It really comes down to the underlying architecture. Fable 5 belongs to Anthropic's Mythos class of models.
Okay.
When they were developing this class, they trained it on an unprecedented volume of highly specialized data, making it exceptionally capable in two specific domains, which are cybersecurity and biology.
So it's basically an expert in those fields.
Right. It understands code vulnerabilities and biological synthesis at a level we haven't really seen before.
Which sounds amazing for medical research and defense, but obviously they were terrified of bad actors using it to write malicious malware or design synthetic pathogens, so they installed Guardrails. But here are the facts of story number 2. Those guardrails are so overly restrictive that Fable 5 is flat out refusing incredibly basic, harmless tasks.
It's ridiculous. Let's look at the cybersecurity side first. Valentina Palmiotti, a highly respected researcher at IBM X-Force, reported that Fable 5 refuses to even read public cybersecurity blog posts.
Public posts.
And Matt Sushi, a veteran in the field, noted that if you ask it to simply write secure, defensive code, which is a standard software engineering best practice, the model assumed you're doing offensive hacking and instantly downgrades you to Opus 4.8.
See, that makes zero sense to me. If I ask a system to lock my digital doors, it accuses me of being a burglar. How does the software make that kind of massive leap in logic?
Because Anthropic safety classifiers aren't reasoning like humans. They are matching data vectors. Think of it less like a smart security guard and more like a bouncer who doesn't understand context at all.
Okay, right.
The bouncer was told no weapons allowed. So he's out there confiscating a chef's butter knife and a child's water gun because they vaguely match the keyword parameters of weapon.
That is hilarious, but also terrible for a premium tool.
Exactly. The AI is scanning the prompt for trigger words related to cyber vulnerabilities. When it sees them, even in a defensive context, it just panics and shuts the process down to avoid liability.
Which completely explains the utter absurdity of the biology restrictions. Tech reporters have been testing Fable 5, and it refuses to answer high school level science questions.
Yeah, it's wild.
It refused to answer, what are mitochondria?
Yeah.
It refused to explain what causes hay fever. It wouldn't explain how asthma medicine works or what a prion is.
Right, because in that vector database we talked about, the word prion sits mathematically close to synthetic pathogen. The system lacks the semantic nuance to realize you're just asking for a textbook definition.
But interestingly, reporters found it would occasionally answer complex questions about DNA. It is completely haphazard.
Slightly inconsistent.
It is beyond haphazard, really. It fundamentally breaks the utility of the product. Let's look at another analogy. It's like buying a state-of-the-art smartphone, but the operating system won't let you text your doctor because it's overly terrified of violating medical privacy laws. That phone is useless to me.
That's a great point. And Anthropic claims this is a necessary conservative measure to prevent bioweapons.
But look at the real-world impact of that, quote, conservative measure. To prevent a theoretical bioterrorist, the system refuses to help a high school biology teacher build a lesson plan about hay fever.
Right. Now, Anthropic did set up something called a cyber verification program. If you're a verified cybersecurity professional, you can jump through all these administrative hoops, apply for special access, and get a version of Fable 5 with fewer limitations.
But what about the everyday working professional? What about a small business owner trying to secure their customer database? They aren't going to get approved for a special tier.
No, not at all.
So they're left paying premium subscription fees for a tool that actively refuses to do basic tasks out of an extreme, almost irrational abundance of caution.
Anthropic spokesperson, Parul Maheshwari, stated that they made this trade-off so customers could benefit from the model's capabilities sooner without the risks.
But if the capabilities are locked behind a wall of false positive safety flags, the customer isn't benefiting. They are just beta testing a broken filter.
Exactly. Which brings us to the most critical part of this entire Fable 5 rollout. How do they actually run that bouncer we talked about? How do they enforce these incredibly strict safety rules and scan your queries for trigger words?
Well, by meticulously logging everything you do.
Yeah.
And that leads us right to the facts of story number 3. To operate Fable 5's safety classifiers, Anthropic requires a highly invasive data retention policy. They need to retain your prompts and the AI's outputs for 30 days.
30 whole days.
Yeah. And if their system flags your prompt for a policy violation, which, as we just established, could be something as innocent as asking about asthma or defensive code, they retain that data for up to 2 years.
Which is an eternity in the tech world.
It really is. And because of this, Microsoft has completely banned its own employees from using Claude Fable 5 internally.
This is a staggering development when you consider the corporate landscape right now. Microsoft is arguably the biggest player pushing AI integration in the workplace. But their internal legal team took one look at Anthropic's 30-day data retention requirement and immediately hit the brakes.
They didn't want any part of it.
None. They are deeply concerned about confidential information, proprietary code, and sensitive customer data leaking over to Anthropic servers.
Let me clarify one detail here for anyone listening who might be using these tools at work right now. If you are a Microsoft customer using GitHub Copilot, you still have access to Fable 5. But for Microsoft's own internal developers building Microsoft products, they are restricted to using older Claude models that operate under what is called a zero data retention, or ZDR, policy.
And we really need to break down why that distinction matters so much for enterprise compliance. Under a zero data retention policy, a developer can paste a snippet of unreleased, highly confidential source code into the AI to debug it.
Okay.
The cloud architecture processes the compute, returns the answer, and instantly wipes the memory. The data never rests on a server.
Right. It's completely ephemeral.
But under Fable 5's new rules, that proprietary source code sits on Anthropic servers for an entire month. If you're dealing with NDAs or European GDPR privacy laws, or just basic corporate trade secrets, no enterprise lawyer is going to greenlight that kind of exposure.
No way.
If Anthropic suffers a data breach during that 30-day window, Microsoft's unreleased products are suddenly out in the wild.
And what if it gets flagged for a false positive? Say a Microsoft engineer asks Fable 5 to review the security protocols of a new server architecture. The clumsy safety filter assumes it's a hacking attempt, blocks the request, and now Microsoft's highly sensitive security blueprints are locked on Anthropic servers for 2 whole years.
Exactly. The legal liability is astronomical.
The irony here is incredible. Microsoft is pouring billions of dollars into telling the public that AI is safe, secure, and ready for enterprise adoption. Yet when it comes to their own proprietary data, they do not trust the data privacy of Anthropic's new safety protocol at all.
Right. They are essentially saying, is fine for our customers, but too risky for us.
Wow.
It really highlights a massive unresolved tension in the tech sector right now. You cannot have algorithmic safety without intense surveillance. In order to guarantee that a user isn't doing anything dangerous, the AI company has to watch every single keystroke, analyze it against a database, and score it for review. Safety and privacy are acting as opposing forces here.
Which should be a massive wake-up call for anyone working with sensitive information. If a tech titan like Microsoft, with endless legal resources and top-tier security infrastructure, refuses to feed its internal data into Fable 5, shouldn't everyday professionals be just as protective?
They absolutely should be.
If you're a lawyer using AI to summarize deposition notes, or a financial planner analyzing a client's tax spreadsheet, or even just a parent organizing your family's sensitive medical records, you need to understand the mechanics of what you are using. These ultra-safe, heavily guarded models are achieving that safety by retaining your data.
Transparency is the ultimate currency right now, and Anthropic spent a massive amount of that currency this week. They really painted themselves into a corner.
How so?
Well, by declaring the Mythos class too dangerous for public release earlier in the development cycle, they set an impossible standard for themselves. When they finally did release Fable 5, they had to prove to regulators that they could control it.
Right.
But in doing so, they strangled the product's utility and alienated the very professionals who were eager to use it.
Some voices in the industry are actually trying to defend the strategy. Matt Sush suggests that perhaps it's better to cast a wide net and catch more false positives in these early days, and then slowly relax the guardrails as the technology matures.
But I mean, that is a very generous interpretation of a flawed rollout. The release a broken filter now, fix the false positives later approach might be acceptable for a free consumer app.
Yeah, maybe.
But when you're charging premium enterprise subscription rates for frontier-level tools, users expect the software to know the mathematical difference between a hacker writing malware and a high school student researching cell biology.
They certainly don't expect their queries to be secretly rerouted to Opus 4.8 without a price adjustment or notification. It is a masterclass in how not to deploy a highly anticipated product.
It really is. And it leaves the entire AI community waiting to see if Anthropic can untangle this mess without compromising their core safety mission.
Before we wrap up, a quick thanks to Old Glory, an iconic music and sports fan merch store, perfect for the techie in your life. Use promo code SNARFUL for 15% off at oldglory.com.
So let's look at the big picture of everything we've covered today.
Yeah, let's do a quick recap. We've seen a massive misstep from Anthropic on 3 entirely connected fronts. First, they tried to covertly control their competitors by degrading Fable 5 for AI researchers, hiding the fact that they were falling back to legacy models to protect their own market share.
Right.
Second, they overcorrected their safety protocols, utilizing crude data vectors that block basic high school science questions and standard cybersecurity best practices. And third, to enforce this hypervigilant safety net, they implemented a 30-day data retention policy that spooked Microsoft's legal teams so badly they banned their own employees from using the tool.
It all connects back to the core tension of the current technological era, which is this tug of war between safety and usability.
Yeah.
Anthropic is terrified of the worst-case scenarios, the bioweapons and the mass cyber attacks. But in their desperate attempt to mitigate those extreme edge cases, they've engineered a product that is simultaneously too restricted to be useful for the experts and too invasive to be trusted by corporate compliance teams.
It really leaves you wondering what the path forward actually looks like, because hardware and software are moving at light speed right now, but if the guardrails are this clunky and invasive, the speed doesn't even matter.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We are constantly sold the narrative that artificial intelligence is going to democratize knowledge, level the playing field, and unleash unprecedented human potential.
Right.
But look closely at the mechanics of what happened this week. If the only way to make the next generation of software quote-unquote safe is to severely limit what everyday people are allowed to ask it, and to meticulously log and retain everything they type for up to 2 years, are we actually building tools to empower people? Or are we just building a highly monitored walled garden reserved for a verified few?
That is a question we are all going to have to answer very soon. We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.